Conveying people sometimes are just called to shield themselves from being vulnerable, and that this will only make us feel worse. That we can actually be stronger if we aren't alone, which she now asserts they aren't, as she mentions, not always alone. They can often be comforted just by having someone who understands them and who's kind and supportive, even when they focus less on material things or aren't as rich. This can help them feel relaxed even in dangerous times. They are like two candles in the dark, and she asserts she still loves them, showing that if we truly love someone, we should act on it. And also we see that when she thinks Virgil is gonna die, she gets bossy again and then tells him to go back up. We see that she tells him that she loves him, and he tells her that he loves her, and then she can accept that she's gonna die, showing we can be accepting of losing people as long as we know they love us. That, or we can drink ourselves to death on the couch till Newbie shows up. Man, I really need help. I need a therapist. A devil woman. Also, then she sees Virgil still alive and they become a couple again, and we see that if we become kinder, we can be the people we actually want to be. We just need to be willing to be vulnerable. And this is also really wise females. Indeed, if we are aggressive and mean, we will mostly just feel bad of ourselves and can get people to hate us, and as a result we will only become more hatefulness. Also, if we aren't honest of our feelings, we can hurt the people we love. And in fact, if we have friends to support us that bring us relaxation, we can just feel a lot more happy. And indeed, sometimes we should be kind, and this can really allow us to help the people who need us. And we can really survive a lot better as teams. That is why societies develop. And also it is true that if we only focus on ourselves, we have a lot less to live for. As physical interests aren't that fulfilling, and we also can be warmer and trust people more if we have something meaningful to live for, as we really have something we can share with them. And also we often don't know our true kind side, still we allow them to come out, and we should listen to the people we care for, as they only want to help us and they really understand us and can see us from a more objective angle at the same time. And it's true that if we don't share our problems with others, they indeed cannot help us, and sacrificing ourselves for people can make us feel like we have a purpose. And also showing our vulnerable side can allow us to be less alone, and being not alone makes painful experiences more bearable. And being open can allow people to know that we love them, and a lot of people indeed pretend to be mean, like a defense mechanism. I, in fact, am not one of them. By the way, I murdered your brother. His heart is in your left drawer. Have fun! Then lastly, there's also a deep theme about paranoia and aggression centered around Coffee's character arc. Coffee is distant and irritated with people, as he only focuses on a mission, acting mean to Lindsay. And then bossing the crew around, showing that only focusing on our own objectives and mistreating people is wrong, even when we do it for a higher goal. And this will also lead to others being more aggressive. And then she gets the shakes, and oh my god, I'm even more of an asshole than usual. But then he gets the shakes, but tries not to focus on it, and it becomes worse. Showing that not admitting that we cannot handle something will allow us to go crazy, and we see automatically assumes the aliens are Russians, showing that if we only think in terms of fear, we will prevent ourselves from being happy and become consumed with hatred. And it's of course silly, they were Islamic terrorists. Okay, I'll admit that was really tired. I've ashamed myself. I'm sorry. And he takes the orders to take the sub, causing the rig to be crashed, showing that if we don't do the right thing because of others, this will only backfire. And he then apologizes, saying he had no choices, he was under orders, showing that we should act out of our own conscience or else we will get hurt. And he then assumes when Lindsay saw the aliens that they are Russians and becomes only more paranoid, showing paranoia will only escalate. And he then bosses the crew around, causing them to be hostile and him to only feel more hurt. Perfectly shown, like with Lindsay, and in the war theme that hatred will only escalate. Also we see that he's confronted by Lindsay on the fact that he has a nuke on the rig, and he then gets aggressive as he thinks of her as a threat, showing that thinking of people as threats can make ourselves one. And then once he sees the aliens, he only gets more scared, showing that if we focus too much on hatred, we will eventually get to be unable to stop focusing on it, and that we will only hurt ourselves even more. It's beautifully shown by him cutting his own arm, and then we will become detached as he doesn't even listen or take advice from his fellow SEAL when he tells him to get some sleep. And it doesn't affect me though. Again, don't sympathize with me. I'm dead inside. Like Jordan. Or Talia. I had a threesome with them. Now I know what you're thinking. That would be awesome. But it is awesome. The first time, but then it just gets boring. Not really. Then he has the crew locked up and he tapes up Lindsay, showing that if we give in to hatred, we will become blind to reason, and that we will not even listen to those that support us, as he doesn't listen to another SEAL, and that if we only act out of fear, as he does, we will endanger ourselves and attack the innocent, which he does by nuking the aliens, which will kill him and the crew in the process. And also we see this will cause people to abandon us as the SEAL takes his bullets away, and then we see that Virgil attacks him, and that paranoia can get so bad that we will try to kill people as he tries to do so with Virgil, that if we don't come to our senses as he doesn't, people will be forced to kill us. Willis, as happens when they crash a sub and he drowns. This is also really wise, and by the way, did he drown because the pressure was so fast that it probably just shattered his body? So could you then technically call it drowning? I should have asked that to that guy before I put him in the water. It would have been interesting. I actually had him sink really deep. I wonder whether he drowned first, or whether he already got so deep while he was still alive that he died from the pressure. But then his lungs would collapse and there would get water in his lungs, so could you call that drowning? The mysteries of life. This is also a really wise and smart theme, as indeed also if we do focus on the mission, but mistreating people is still wrong, and we will only cause them to be angry at us, and if we only focus on fear, eventually it will take us over, and we see everything with hatred, and often paranoia escalates. Not admitting our own weaknesses will usually cause us to not act on them. And also seeing everything as a threat will cause us to act violent to everything, so then this will cause us to become threats, as it is indeed wrong to mindlessly take orders also, as they can be wrong, like with the Germans in World War II. Or were they? And indeed, if we are mean... Okay, I'm sorry, that was a little bit very extremely, incredibly, certainly a lot, totally tired. Mean to people, they will be mean back, and this will escalate, leading us to only go more crazy. That is why tensions between Turks and Berbers in the Fatimid Caliphate only became worse. And also indeed, if we don't take advice from our friends, we can make bad mistakes and they can betray us, and if we only think in fearful terms, we will end up hurting the innocent people as we perceive them with fear, and this will mean we have to be stopped and possibly killed. Now if you excuse me, I'm gonna meditate to resist making a George W. Bush joke. So now onto the tone of the film. The film is a very strong tone, as it is like Cameron's other early sci-fi movies, dark and dramatic, playing relationships seriously and having death, and also many scary moments, and not accommodate inappropriate moments or too much. But it has enough moments of levity and action to make it very enjoyable and exciting also, and it is a lot more optimistic in the vein of Lucas's original Star Wars, except this is a very down-to-earth science fiction film, making it extra original, that combination. Also the film is really well paced, it has a lot of build-up, and it's character-driven and theme-driven, and it is very intellectual. This is very refreshing as well. But a reviewer complained it's too verbose for a follow-up to Cameron's Aliens. Are we almost done? Please tell me we're almost done. Well, a film should not be judged by the previous film of a filmmaker. Remember when we did that with M. Night Shyamalan? He kept making the same thing and then we were not happy either. So... And don't we praise filmmakers like Steven Spielberg for then doing Jaws and The Color Purple? Are we complaining that The Color Purple was too verbose? But so, no, we shouldn't complain about a filmmaker trying new things. As a filmmaker extending his reach and grasp is good, and the film is more spiritual, but and this makes it smarter, and it's also very intellectual. This only makes it deeper and more complex. But it still has a couple of fantastic action scenes and loads of suspense as well as humor, so it isn't solely verbose, so it also works as a very strong action film, which makes it extra multi-layered, exciting as well as deep. Also, onto the genre combinations. People have complained that trying to extract the essences of many genres led to incoherence, so let's look at that. It combines a romance film with a Cold War submarine thriller, but this combines perfectly as the romance grows through the dark times, and mirrors the war conflict, as we saw on the thematic level. And by the characters being deep, it means the suspense is extra strong, like in Alien or Aliens. Aliens combined suspense and war along with romance also. And this was also the case in The Terminator. As we care more for the characters, it would add Disney fantasy to it, well, optimistic science fiction, which combines well with the gritty Cold War style, as it makes for a nice contrast, and it flows naturally, as the main reason the film is dark is because of the human aggression, and the aliens are both that. And it would add pseudo-mystical science fiction to it. Well, yes, it's mystical, which fits well with the aliens being wiser and the death of the Romans, and again contrast to the war side, and it isn't too mystical either. The technology is well explained, logical, and that overrated nonsense guy, he do not speak of, complains it had science fiction that would be arbitrary, and that the science fiction would be overall bad, as he thinks they would arbitrarily succumb to pressure. But how? Coffee dies when he sinks deeper than they were below the rig, and Virgil's technology starts malfunctioning when they go a lot deeper than the rig, and everything works on the rig. And the water would be quite blue. Well, yeah, when they are close to the surface, down below it's totally dark and gritty, and you can barely see anything unless there's artificial light. And also it complains that the aliens know how to form water in air while living underwater. Yeah, they've been close to the surface before, and they invented vehicles that function separately from water, like water in air doesn't function as underwater. So I will murder him, but also the film is realistic science fiction that perfectly fits the greedy war feeling, with them using breathing fluid, which has been experimented with in real life, and it is very interesting that they try it on a rat, as you often do with lab rats, and it seems to be drowning, but actually we see it isn't that scary, along with the boss of the rat. And we see that people can easily suffer from precious nervous syndrome, and that storms really have effect on the underwater conditions. It is a really smart and gritty science fiction film, which again makes the film even more equal to T1, T2 and Aliens. The film is an action film which fits well with the war side, and again the love grows through it, and it isn't too action-packed. To contradict the mystical tone, it has comedic relief which fits the nicer characters, so it all merges naturally. It merges many genres, but it makes it more complex and multi-layered, while it's all natural and seamless. It's a seamless whole and done very well. This is what little Jimmy justifiably praised the Terminator for. That film was an action, romance, science fiction, film noir, horror film. A film Master Adam praised Aliens for having action, comedic relief, romance, humor, science fiction, and horror. So actually the film's complexity made it perfectly live up to Cameron's other films. In other words, screw you guys, I'm going home. Wrong show. So the film mixes many genres very well, and it is also very suspenseful, with the aliens being mysterious and you at first thinking they might be Russians, and them being very powerful, and you seeing them so quickly that you have got no idea what they are, and them coming up surprisingly and being otherworldly and moist. And also we see all the people have slowly drowned in the stuff, and that they had a spider or scorpion or whatever in their mouth, and Coffee spying on them made it very mysterious what he would do. The film also has a really great sense of humor that was appropriate and furthered the story, unlike my humor, of course, which is completely pointless enough to point. But, you know, I'm self-aware, with Virgil asserting he's calm over and over, to then get the news that is so bad that he freaks, showing that even he is overwhelmed by their orders to stop everything to work for the military. And also showed Virgil's more hot-headed side in a relaxed moment, so was very appropriate and developed the characters further. And also Hippie thinking his rat will drown, the seed can breathe fluid, showing that a really horrific experience is a revelation, which is another really clever contrast and develop Hippie's and Cat's characters, seeing the scared side of Hippie as well as the more fair side of Cat who acknowledges this, and the more sadistic side of the seal, while at the same time establishing how the breathing fluid works for later in the story. And this was darker humor in the moments there were tensions between the crews and the SEALs, making it fit perfectly, and the army officer commenting they only board this up for 2 hours when they are vulnerable to a deadly storm, and in that time they could easily get crushed, commenting, and the other guy commenting that they would get the shit kicked out of them in 2 hours. It was really hilarious, as one of the guys was being very casual about death, and the other one was being very blunt, which highlighted the excitement before the action, as well as the mistakes and the decadence of the army, and Virgil remarking that he finds it strange they called the storm Fred, this horrible thing should be named after the women, was a fun character-based joke that highlighted his tensions with Lindsay and further that. Also really funny was him actually getting Lindsay mad when he remarks she misses a guy that made her laugh, as she knows this is true, and she then immediately shuts him out and remarks that he should start his own talk show, which is funny as he is indeed a smartass, and it is funny he goes to throw his ring in the toilet, yet of course he's so hopeful that he has to stick his hand in the blue water and get it out, so it gets totally gross, which makes fun of his own character's weaknesses. This shows his obsessive hopefulness as well as Lindsay's more bitchy side. Also, what was really funny was that the whole crew was against dropping the mission for a dangerous military operation until they heard they would get 3 times the normal pay, as people really are that greedy, and this helped develop the theme of manipulation. What also really funny was Hippie hearing they were gonna have to go near radiation, saying that the money isn't worth losing your dick, which is totally true, and hate his conflict with the SEALs. And also the film has got wonderful action scenes that are numerous and like in any camera movie, further plots, themes, as well as characterization, but they also are incredibly very well built up and placed in this film. For example, in the opening, the aliens are mysterious, and them crashing as a surprise and sets the tension, and it really is really well placed, and it is epic and complex with large crashing subs and rocks and electric sparks, fires and large floods, it's fully hitting the front and then being so deep to full pressures and entire waves and flooding multiple chambers, and this set up people thinking it are Russians and then being paranoid, as well as the crew being hired to get them out. And many people die, and that makes everything better. And it also had a very natural direction, with the camera shaking and fluently moving with the flooding, as well as being very exciting and vibrant and fast, fluent editing it had as well, which was very smooth and exciting. And Americans dying, once again. That will weaken them in preparation for Saibo Mao Zedong's his resurrection. Yeah, me and Hitler, we kind of had a falling out, I'm afraid.